Today we're going to share a story with you. It's quite a disturbing one, actually.
It really is. It starts with, well, what looks like one thing, but quickly becomes something else entirely.
Exactly. We're using a detailed transcript that recounts a very mysterious case from Canada. Picture this. A car discovered submerged in water. Inside, 4 lives lost. It seems like a tragic accident at first.
But as the details emerge, it unravels into something far more complex and, frankly, deeply unsettling.
Let's set the scene. It's the morning of June 30th, 2009, Kingston, Ontario, Canada.
Right. The police get a call about a vehicle in the Rideau Canal.
So they arrive, and there it is. A black Nissan Sentra, completely underwater.
And the initial thought, naturally, is, okay, a terrible traffic accident, someone lost control.
A horrible thought, but then they managed to pull the car out.
And what they find inside, it just changes everything instantly.
It's shocking. The bodies of 4 deceased females are inside the car.
4 people. That immediately raises major questions, even if it was somehow an accident.
Totally. And then something else happens just a few hours later that morning.
Yeah, the timing is quite striking.
A family walks into the Kingston police station. This Shafia family. It's the father, Mohammed, the mother, Tuba, and their oldest son, Hamad.
And they're there to file a missing persons report?
For 3 of their daughters and another relative. They initially say she's a nanny, kind of a caregiver.
And they also report that their car, a black Nissan Sentra, is missing.
So the police officers, who've literally just pulled that exact make and model car out of the canal, they immediately connect the dots.
Make, color, license plate, they check it against the report.
And it's a match. It's the same car.
Which means the 4 bodies found inside are the missing family members. Zainab, who was 19.
Sahar, 17.
Kiti, just 13.
And the relative, Rona Amir Mohammed, who is 52.
So just to recap, 4 members of this family dead in their car in the canal, found the very same morning the others report them missing.
Yeah, I mean, alarm bells are ringing loud and clear for the place at this point.
But absolutely. And the source material gives us some background on the Shafia family, which is pretty crucial here.
Right. Originally from Afghanistan.
They lived briefly in Australia, then spent about 11 years in Dubai.
And that's where the father, Mohammed Shafia, apparently made a lot of money in the used car business.
Yeah, significant wealth. Then, in 2007, they moved to Canada, settling near Montreal. But Mohammed invested heavily back in the Kingston area.
About $2 million Canadian, building things like shopping areas, a big house.
So financially, they seemed very successful.
But the source also describes Mohammed as extremely strict, very controlling head of the family, demanded total obedience.
And this control, this sort of patriarchal structure, becomes really central to the whole investigation later on.
It seems to be the key, yeah. Okay, let's go back to the canal scene. The lead investigator, Officer Chris Scott, he was immediately suspicious.
You can see why. I mean, looking at the location, it wasn't an easy spot to just accidentally drive into.
Right. The source mentions obstacles, like curbs, rough ground. It didn't seem like a simple mistake.
It looked more like the car was deliberately put there, maybe even forced.
And then there was a witness. Someone saw the black Nissan near the canal that night.
But it wasn't alone. It was being followed closely by a large SUV.
Which, again, really contradicts the accident theory, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. And then the findings inside the Nissan itself were just bizarre, really unusual details.
Okay, what stood out?
Well, first, the ignition was off. Turned completely off.
In a panic situation, you'd think the engine might still be running, or the key turned on, right?
Exactly. And then, this is really strange, both front seats, the driver and passenger, were fully reclined, laid all the way back.
Laid back. That's not how you drive, especially not if you're, crashing or trying to escape a sinking car.
Not at all. And adding to that, none of the 4 victims were wearing seatbelts.
No seatbelts. And the driver's side window was rolled down.
Yeah, the driver's window down, the others up. But the most chilling thing, maybe, was the lack of any signs of struggle.
Meaning they didn't seem to have tried to get out?
Right. No evidence they tried to open doors, break windows, nothing. It was like they were unable to react as the car went into the water.
Which points away from a panicked accident scene.
Definitely. It suggested they might have been incapacitated, or maybe even worse, before the car was submerged.
Okay, so that leads us to the medical evidence. The autopsies came back a couple of days later, July 2nd.
And the cause of death for all 4 was drowning. That part was clear.
Okay, drowning. But there was a crucial uncertainty, wasn't there?
Yes. The medical examiner couldn't say for sure when they drowned, Was it after the car hit the water while they were inside?
Or were they already unconscious or possibly even drowned somewhere else before being put in the car?
Exactly. That ambiguity was huge. They just couldn't determine the sequence.
Were there other findings? Injuries?
Yes. 3 of the 4 victims had head injuries, bruises, about 6 centimeters across.
And what did they make of those? Could they have happened in the crash?
They could have, yes, from the impact as the car entered the water. Or they could have been caused by blunt force trauma beforehand from an external source.
So, inconclusive on the cause of the head injuries.
Right. Toxicology came back clean, no drugs, no toxins. The source mentions things like, the typical signs of drowning, frothy foam, wrinkled skin, but those are general findings.
So the key medical points were drowning was the cause of death, uncertainty about when it happened relative to the car entering the water, and those ambiguous head injuries.
And all of that combined with the scene, the lack of struggle, the seats, the ignition made the police highly skeptical of the accident story.
The physical evidence just kept piling up. They looked closer at the Nissan again on July 3rd.
And found something really critical, damage, but not to the front.
To the rear of the Nissan.
Exactly. If you drive forward into a canal, you expect front-end damage, right? Rear damage strongly suggests it was hit or pushed from behind.
That's a major piece. Something propelled it in.
And near the scene, they found a broken piece of plastic. Looked like part of a headlight.
Okay, but it wasn't from the Nissan.
No, they confirmed it didn't belong to the Sentra, so what did it belong to?
The police started looking at the family's other car.
The silver Lexus SUV, the one Mohammed and Hamad used.
And when they examined the Lexus...
They found damage on the front of the SUV.
And did the broken piece match?
It was a perfect match. That piece of broken headlight found by the canal came directly from the Shafia family's Lexus.
Wow. Okay, but the family must have had an explanation for the damage to the Lexus, right?
They did. Hamad, the son, had actually called the police later that morning on June 30th.
After the Nissan was found?
Yes, after it was found. He called to report that he had hit a pole in Montreal and damaged the Lexus.
Okay, but the timing, that's incredibly suspicious.
Hugely suspicious. The Nissan is found early morning with rear damage. Later that morning, Hamad calls to report front damage to the other family car, claiming he hit a pole.
It sounds like an attempt to create an alibi for the damage.
That's exactly what the police thought. They started putting it all together. The suspicious scene, the witness seeing an SUV, the rear damage on the Nissan, the matching front damage on the Lexus, this flimsy story about hitting a pole.
The picture became much clearer.
Yeah. The police theory solidified this wasn't an accident, it was murder.
The Lexus was used to deliberately push the Nissan with the 4 victims inside into the canal.
And the story about hitting a pole was just a lie to cover up how the Lexus got damaged.
So the focus shifts squarely onto the father, Mohammed, the mother, Tuba, and the son, Hamad.
Right. They became the prime suspects. Police then used technology to track their movements.
Cell phone data.
Exactly. It showed some interesting things. Like Hamad making a solo trip from Niagara Falls, where they'd been vacationing, back to Kingston on June 27th, just a few days before.
A solo trip. What do they think that was about?
The theory was he was scouting the location, checking out the canal locks, maybe planning the logistics.
Okay, and the whole family was in Kingston the night before.
Yes, they stopped overnight on June 29th, planning to drive back to Montreal the next day.
And could they pinpoint the time of the incident using phone data?
They could get pretty close. Sahar, the 17-year-old, was texting her boyfriend. Her last message or call was at 1:38 a.m. on June 30th. She even sent him a photo.
So whatever happened after 1:38 a.m.
Right. Police estimated the car went into the canal sometime shortly after that last contact. They had a motive emerging around family control, physical evidence, movements, a timeline, but they needed something more direct.
Something connecting the suspects to the act itself.
Which led them to use a surveillance tactic. On July 18th, they brought the family into the station.
And while they were there,
they secretly planted a listening device, a bug, in the family's car.
Yeah. And did they do anything to prompt them to talk?
Yes, a clever move. They told the family basically, we found CCTV footage near the canal and we're working on recovering the images.
Even though they hadn't.
Right. It was a fabrication designed to make them nervous, make them think they might have been caught on camera, and hopefully discuss it in the car.
And did it work? Did they talk?
Oh, it worked. The recordings from that bugged car were absolutely chilling and incredibly damning.
What did they say?
Well, first they talked about the lack of cameras, seeming relieved. But then Muhammad, the father, started talking about his daughters, with just venomous anger.
Anger. About the daughters who were dead.
Yes, accusing them of betraying the family. The transcript quotes him saying things like, "They betrayed us greatly, betrayed our goodwill, betrayed customs and traditions."
Wow. Not grief, but betrayal.
Exactly. He cursed them, cursed their boyfriends, wished them to hell, and then he said something truly chilling.
What was that?
He said his honor was more important than anything, even if it meant being hanged for what happened. His honor came first.
His honor. And the mother, Tuba.
She's heard questioning if the two younger ones, Gidi and Sahar, really deserved it. She sort of acknowledged Zainab, the oldest, was wrong in their eyes, but questioned the necessity for the younger two.
But Muhammad pushed back.
He was insistent. He said, according to the recording, they made things difficult and there was no other way.
No other way. That sounds like a confession, almost.
It was incredibly incriminating. It laid out the motive, this twisted sense of honor, and strongly implied their involvement. It cemented the police case.
Was there anything else? Any digital evidence?
Yes. When they searched the family home on July 21st, they seized a laptop.
And found incriminating searches.
Internet search history included terms like where to commit murder.
Seriously.
Yes, and also, can a prisoner own real estate?
So planning not just the act, but even the potential consequences.
It certainly looked that way. It suggested premeditation, not some spontaneous crime of passion.
Okay, so with all of this, the scene, the car damage, the timeline, the phone data, that wiretap conversation, the internet searches, the police had a very strong case.
An overwhelming case, really. So on July 22nd, 2009, they made the arrests.
Muhammad Shafia, Hamad Shafia, and Tuba Yahya were all arrested.
And charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder.
Did Tua ever give a different account?
Later on, during the legal proceedings, she did offer a version. She admitted being in the Nissan at first with Rona and 2 of the daughters.
Okay.
But she claimed Muhammad and Hamad called her back to the Lexus. She said she was in the Lexus when they used it to push the Nissan into the water.
So she saw it happen, but claimed she wasn't part of the initial act inside the Nissan.
Essentially, yes. She tried to distance herself from whatever happened before the push, claiming she didn't know exactly what they did, but her account had inconsistencies and didn't really hold up against the other evidence.
Let's talk more about this motive, the honor-killing aspect. What does that really mean in this context?
Well, it's rooted in a very strict patriarchal interpretation of family honor, where the family's reputation is seen as directly tied to the behavior, especially the perceived purity and obedience of its female members.
So things like dating or wanting a Western lifestyle.
Exactly. Actions like wanting independence, choosing boyfriends, resisting arranged marriage, even dressing differently, can be seen as bringing shame or dishonor to the entire family.
And in extreme, horrific cases like this, violence is seen by the perpetrators as the only way to cleanse that perceived dishonor.
And the source details the individual lives of the victims, showing just how their desires clashed with this rigid control. It's heartbreaking.
Let's start with Zainab, the 19-year-old. She had a secret boyfriend, Aima.
Right. When Hamad, her brother, found out, the family cracked down, basically put her under house arrest.
But she managed to escape.
She did, with Ama's help. Went to a women's shelter. Now, she was 19, an adult. The police spoke to her, respected her choice, but her defiance infuriated the family.
And they tricked her into coming back.
Yeah, they pretended they would accept her relationship, even allow her to marry Ama.
But it was a lie.
Totally. They held a quick ceremony, but within a day, forced her to separate, divorce him, and brought her back under their absolute control.
Horrible. And Sahar, the 17-year-old.
She also wanted more freedom. Wanted to take off her job sometimes, wear makeup, live more like her Canadian peers. She also had a secret boyfriend, Ricardo.
And the family knew.
Hamad reported her activities to Muhammad, and she suffered abuse as a result. The source mentions frequent school absences, visible injuries.
And she attempted suicide.
Yes, tragically, she overdosed at school, and when the school called Tuba, the mother, her response was reportedly, "Let her die."
That's just chilling. Did child services get involved?
They did after the suicide attempt. But there was a major failing. They interviewed Sahar with her parents present.
Oh no, she couldn't possibly speak freely then.
Of course not. It was a huge missed opportunity to understand the abuse she was facing.
And Gidi, the youngest, only 13?
She was clearly deeply unhappy too. She told the teacher she wished she could live in an orphanage just to get away from home.
And she looked up to Sahar.
Very much so. Her diary apparently showed Sahar was her idol, and Sahar had promised that if she ever managed to escape, she'd take Geeti with her.
Just kids wanting a different life.
Yeah.
And then there's Rona, the 52-year-old. She wasn't just a relative or nanny.
No. The source reveals she was actually Muhammad's first wife, married back in Afghanistan.
First wife. So Tuba was the second wife.
Yes. Rona apparently faced cruelty because she couldn't have children. Muhammad then married Tuba. Rona was effectively demoted to the role of a servant in the household.
Treated terribly.
Yes, controlled by both Muhammad and Tuba. Her passport was withheld, she was called a servant, paid almost nothing like 50 Canadian dollars a month.
Did she try to get help?
She confided in relatives overseas who urged her to leave, but she was terrified of Muhammad's threats.
And she knew about the danger to the daughters.
Disturbingly, yes. Rona apparently overheard Muhammad and Tuba planning. Muhammad talking about killing Zainab, and then when Tuba asked about the other two, meaning Sahar and Geeti, Muhammad said he'd kill both of them too.
So Rona knew what they were planning. She was likely killed because she knew too much or was just seen as disposable.
It seems likely. It's just an incredibly dark, complex web of control, fear, and violence, all stemming from this idea of preserving family honor.
So the trial happens in January 2012.
Yes. And given the mountain of evidence, the physical evidence, the cell data, the wiretaps, the motive, the outcome was pretty clear.
All three, Muhammad, Hamad, and Tuba, were found guilty.
Guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder.
And the sentence.
Automatic life in prison in Canada for first-degree murder, with no possibility of parole for 25 years. That was the sentence for all 3 of them.
Justice served, in a legal sense. But the source notes one lingering question.
Yeah, despite the convictions, we still don't know exactly what happened in those final moments inside the Nissan right before it went into the water.
Were they already dead? Unconscious? Drugged? Still alive and aware?
None of the convicted ever confessed to those specific, horrific details. It remains unknown. A final, terrible mystery about their last moments.
The narrator in our source material also reflects on whether this could have been prevented. Were there missed opportunities?
It's an important point. There were several moments where authorities interacted with the family or the victims where red flags were present.
Like when Zainab ran away.
Yes. Police spoke to her. She was legally an adult, but the situation she was fleeing, the extreme control, was clear. Could more have been done?
And Sahar's suicide attempt. And the flawed child services interview.
A critical failure. Interviewing a potential abuse victim with the alleged abusers present is just counterproductive and dangerous.
And even Geeti telling her teacher she wanted out.
These were all potential intervention points. The case tragically underscores how crucial it is for teachers, police, social workers to recognize the signs of controlling abusive family dynamics.
And to have procedures in place that genuinely allow victims to speak safely and be heard.
Absolutely. Learning from these failures, sadly, is the main thing we can do now, hoping to prevent similar tragedies.
And that really concludes the story we wanted to share today. It's a difficult one.
It really is. A stark reminder of how devastating these clashes between extreme tradition and basic human freedom can be.
Maybe the thought to leave you with is just acknowledging how incredibly hard it must be for someone trapped in that kind of fear and control to actually speak out.
And the huge responsibility that puts on the rest of us, on society, to see the signs and find safe, effective ways to step in.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found this account informative, even though it's a tough subject.
Indeed. Please, if you found value in this, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel, Horror Docs. It helps us continue bringing these stories to light.
Goodbye for now.